Hey there. Happy Sunday to you. I'm glad you're here. We're continuing on with our series through grief and loss. Hopefully you're being encouraged. Hopefully it's helping you work through whatever is going on in your life. And I know a lot of you are going through different things in your life because you've written them down, you've shared them, and my heart breaks for you, and I'm sorry. I'm sorry you're going through those things. And I hope that these videos will give you some encouragement to help you get through your day. And I want to start out by reading in the book of 1 Corinthians chapter 13, verse 12. And it says, "For now, in this time of imperfection, we see in a mirror dimly, a blurred reflection, a riddle, an enigma. But then, when the time of perfection comes, we will see reality face to face. Now I know in part, just in fragments, but then I will know fully, just as I have been fully known by God." You know, we look at God and we think, at the beginning of time, when God created everything, He knows all and He saw it all to be good, right? Everything to Him was good. And then the fall happened. And that's when everything becomes confusing. So a lot of questions people might ask is, okay, God, if you're sovereign, why is all that happening? If you are in control of every little second of the day and everything going on and you hate evil, how does all this evil work together for good? And I know that's like a big thing to ask. Like, if God hates evil and all these things, how is this even going to be good in my own life? And I may not know this here, this side of heaven, because when we get to heaven, we'll be able to see everything in whole. And that we're just, right now it says we're seeing in part. And He says in His word that your thoughts are not my thoughts and your ways are not my ways. I know this to be true. And sometimes we wish, you know what, that we could just understand it all and be able to comprehend everything. But God knows that we cannot. And when things are broken, it's hard to even trust in those things. I like reading in 1 Corinthians chapter 13 because it's all about love. And it talks about that God is love and that He's patient, He's enduring. So when we read those words and we know that they're true, then we can hope and trust that, you know what, God can be trusted with right now because He is love, because He promises nothing less than His love. So even though, Lord, I don't even know what I'm supposed to do, I don't know any of these things, but my eyes are going to be focused on You. And sometimes I just long to understand. I want to see the whole story, Lord. I want to see everything. I want to know the whole big picture of my life so that I can understand what's going on. I want to get through this. I want to be able to understand everything. I want to see how my life is going to work out for good, because that's what Your word says. And I think that maybe if You just give me like a little glimpse, just a little glimpse into the future to know everything, even though You may have given me a glimpse of the future of what I'm going to be doing, but I don't know how I'm going to get there. If I could just see a little bit in between, Lord, maybe that would help me get through this. But You don't, because You want me to rely on You. You promise that You're going to give me everything that I need to sustain me through this time in my life. So even though there's a lot of bad things going on around, we know that You are a good, good God despite everything, and that You are going to work all these things out for good to those that love You. And I love You, Lord. So I know You're going to get me through these things, and that's going to build things within me. It's going to build things within my character, within my body, so that I'm going to be able to withstand against the enemy. I'm not going to be able to be bothered by those things, because the feelings that I'm feeling right now are not the full story. The season that I'm going through is not the full story. You will get the glory one day, Lord. You will get the glory in all of this one day. I don't know how, but I know it to be true in Your word, because You said You will see me to completion. So Lord, You're going to help me to trust You through this. Hebrews 11 is a great chapter on faith. It says the triumphs of faith. Let's read this. Now faith, what is faith? It's the assurance of things hoped for, divinely guaranteed, in the evidence of things not seen, the conviction of their reality. Faith comprehends as fact what cannot be experienced by the physical senses. That's good. For by this kind of faith, the men of old gained divine approval. By faith, that is, with an inherent trust and enduring confidence in the power, wisdom, and goodness of God, we understand that the words, the universe ages, were framed and created. They were formed, put in order, and equipped for their intended purpose by the word of God, so that what is seen was not made out of things which are visible. By faith, this is where they go through a lot of people in the Bible and how they lived. By faith, Abel offered to God a more acceptable sacrifice than Cain, through which it was testified of him that he was righteous, and God testified by accepting his gifts. And though he died, yet through this act of faith, he still speaks. And by faith, Enoch was caught up and taken to heaven, so that he would not have a glimpse of death. And he was not found, because God had taken him. For even before he was taken to heaven, he received the testimony still on record that he had walked with God and pleased Him. But without faith, it is impossible to walk with God and please Him. For whoever comes near to God must necessarily believe that God exists, and that He rewards those who earnestly and diligently seek Him. And by faith, Noah, being warned by God about events not yet seen, in reverence prepared an ark for the salvation of his family. By this act of obedience he condemned the world and became an heir of the righteousness which comes by faith. And by faith Abraham, when he was called by God, obeyed by going to a place where he was to receive an inheritance. And he went, not knowing where he was going. By faith he lived as a foreigner in a promised land, as if in a strange land, living in tents with Isaac and Jacob, who were fellow heirs of the same promise. For he was waiting expectantly and confidently, looking forward to the city which has foundations, whose architect and builder is God. By faith, Sarah herself received the ability to conceive a child even when she was long past the normal age for it, because she considered him who had given her the promise to be reliable and true. So from one man, though he was physically as good as dead, were born as many descendants as the stars of heaven in number, and innumerable as the sand of the seashore. All these died in faith, without receiving the tangible fulfillment of God's promises, only having seen and anticipated them, and having welcomed them from a distance, and having acknowledged that they were strangers and exiles on the earth. All those people did get to see those promises come to pass, but we're still reading about them today. Now, those who say such things make it clear that they are looking for a country of their own. And if they had been looking of that country from which they departed as their true home, they would have had a continued opportunity to return. But the truth is, they were longing for a better country, that is a heavenly one. For that reason, God is not ashamed of them, or to be called their God, even to be surnamed their God, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, for he has prepared a city for them. And then it goes on to say, by faith, Abraham, when he was tested, that is, the testing of his faith was still in progress, he offered up Isaac, and he who had received the promises of God was ready to sacrifice his only son, to whom it was said, through Isaac your descendants shall be called. For he considered it reasonable to believe that God was able to raise even Isaac, even from the dead. Indeed, in the sense that he was prepared to sacrifice Isaac in the obedience to God, Abraham did receive him back from the dead, figuratively speaking. By faith, Isaac blessed Jacob and Esau, believing what God revealed to them, even regarding things to come. By faith, Jacob, as he was dying, blessed each of his sons of Joseph and bowed in worship, leaning on top of his staff. By faith, Joseph, when he was dying, referred to the promise of God for the exodus of the sons of Israel from Egypt, and gave instructions concerning the burial of his bones in the land of the promise. By faith, Moses, after his birth, was hidden for 3 months by his parents, because they saw he was a beautiful and divinely favored child, and were not afraid of the king's decree. By faith, Moses, when he had grown up, refused to be called the son of Pharaoh's daughter, because he preferred to endure the hardship of the people of God rather than to enjoy the passing pleasures of sin. He considered the reproach of the Christ, that is, the rebuke that he would suffer for his faithful obedience to God, to be greater wealth than all the treasures of Egypt, for he looked ahead to the reward promised by God. And by faith he left Egypt, being unafraid of the wrath of the king, for he endured steadfastly as seeing him who is unseen. By faith he kept the Passover and the sprinkling of the blood on the doorposts, so that the destroyer of the firstborn would not touch them. By faith the people of Israel crossed the Red Sea as though they were passing through dry land, but when the Egyptians attempted it, they were drowned. And by faith the walls of Jericho fell down after they had been encircled for 7 days. By faith Rahab the prostitute was not destroyed along with those who were disobedient, because she had welcomed the spies in peace. And what more shall I say? From time will fail me if I tell of Gideon, Barak, Samson, Jephthah, of David and Samuel and the prophets, who by faith, that is, with an enduring trust in God and his promise, subdued kingdoms, administered justice, obtained promised blessings, closed the mouth of lions, extinguished the power of raging fire, escaping the edge of the sword, out of weaknesses were made strong, became a mighty and unbeatable in battle, putting enemy forces to flight. Women received back their dead by resurrection, and others were tortured to death, refusing to accept release, offered on the condition of denying their faith so that they would be resurrected to a better life. And others experienced the trial of mocking and scourging amid torture and even chains and imprisonment. They were stoned to death. They were sawn in two, and they were lured with tempting offers to renounce their faith. They were put to death by the sword. They went about wrapped in the skins of sheep and goats, utterly destitute, oppressed, and cruelly treated, people of whom the world was not worthy, wandering in deserts and mountains and living in caves and holes in the ground. And all of these, though they gained divine approval through their faith, did not receive the fulfillment of what was promised, because God had us in mind and had something better for us, that these men and women of authentic faith, would not be made perfect, that is, completed in him, apart from us. That is the key thing to all of this at the end, because God had you in mind. So I don't know what your circumstance is. I don't know these things, but he is seen ahead. ahead. He is seeing the whole greater picture beyond what you and I can see. So I don't know why things are happening in your life. I don't know why you're going through those things, but he is able to see everything. And we are to trust that God had us in mind and had something better for us. Because all these people we're reading about, and that's just a few, they could have not. And I'm sure they doubted, because we read about it in Psalms. I'm sure they go through things and they doubt things and they don't want to have it. But God counted that faith that they had. And that's what he's commenting on over and over. By faith, by faith, by faith. He gives you a bunch of them in there to know that what? They trusted no matter what. And they're not seeing right now. They didn't even see everything come to pass. But I know they are now in heaven. So then we just look at it and go, oh, we have to go through these things. No, we want our life is counted as faith, because there is a whole generation after you that will be impacted. And I don't know what or where, but I know that God does know. So we have to remember that now is not the entire story. There is a greater one going on around us. All right, I hope that encourages you today. Come back next Sunday and we'll talk some more. All right, see ya.